All right, I hope you grabbed your first coffee, at least here in the office. Everybody has one. Perfect. I hope you are awake and I hope you're excited to hear a little bit about marketing mix modeling today. Plan is just to give you a quick overview of how we tackle marketing mix modeling projects at Hannemann, and hopefully at the end, I will have a few thoughts about marketing mix modeling and AI, of course, the hot topic nowadays. So maybe we can get into discussion there, and also your experiences with marketing mix modeling or your plans. Interested to hear about that. But let's get started with a quick introduction about marketing mix modeling. I'm assume you have some rough ideas, but still maybe a quick refresher, starting with a few questions where marketing mix modeling might have. So there's this one really, I would say, popular quote by John Wanamaker: half the money I spend on advertising is wasted. The trouble is I don't know which half. And there, marketing mix modeling might be helpful to tell you which channels are actually working and which ones are not. So similar to the second question, so which channels are actually driving sales? If I, for example, in the rare case that I have more budget nowadays for the next quarter, where should I put my additional money into? Which channels should it be, Facebook or TikTok? And so, like here, the next question. So maybe one channel is working and the other channel is working not. One channel is saturated already. So marketing mix modeling can also help you to make better decisions how to allocate your budget. And at the end, like the big goal is just to spend your money efficiently and not spending too much on channels that are not working properly. So how is MMM doing this? So what's the general idea behind it? So first of all, it of course starts with a lot of data. So one thing you have to pick your dependent variable. With most of the time it's sales that you want to estimate or predict. It could but also be other conversions, could be your leads, could also be app installs or things like that. That's the one thing that you have to collect. And then on the other side, you have to pick more or less all your independent variables where you think that they will have an influence on your sales. That, of course, on the one hand is all your marketing activities, all your marketing spendings on, for example, Google Ads, Instagram. But it could also be other factors like if your competitors would do some marketing activity, would do some promotion. Of course, things like Black Friday will probably have an influence on your sales. When you collect all this data, then you put it into a marketing modeling tool, and the tool tries to evaluate and analyze which channels are actually impacting your sales and which are not. And based on these results, then you hopefully can make better judgment on where to spend your money. But that's just in a nutshell. I will get into a bit more details in the next slides. To give you a bit of background and history, so marketing mix modeling is not really new, to be honest. So the first ideas came up in academia in the 1950s, but it was more like theoretical concepts about marketing mix modeling, and also the main math ideas about response curves, diminishing returns, carryovers that I will mention also in the next slides. Started some time ago. Then the first commercial adoption started like in the 1990s, but was CPG dominated, like really big companies, and also the companies that were doing marketing mix modeling was also quite big because it was just very cost intensive, was very time consuming to collect all the data, to prepare the data, save the data, do the actual processing. Therefore, like 30 years ago, it was only something for more or less big companies, and it was also only done once a year, most or less. Then MMM got a bit less popular in the around 20,000 because there was some kind of there was digital fragmentation, and multi-touch attribution became popular. We can actually track via cookies on a user level and do multi-touch attribution and collect like the user journey and figure out which campaigns actually or which creatives actually worked or not. But then there happened some kind of renaissance, I would say, in the last five to 10 years, One reason is privacy. So GDPR and cookie deprecation made it very difficult to do multi-touch user-based level attribution. On the other hand, we had also this entire cloud computing movement. So it got really easier and cheaper to run models, even on your own computer also, but also in the cloud. Got easier to collect all these data sources that you need to process them. And the last point for this kind of renaissance is also that there are a couple of open source packages out there that you can just use to run your own models, and you don't have to buy expensive tools for that. And of course, nowadays there's also this big agentic marketing mix modeling, or not sure if it's already big, but of course there is some stuff happening with marketing mix modeling and AI, and the promises, of course, that you can even faster iterate on different models, and that it lowers the barriers to actually run your first model even more. Let's see if this is really the case, or I'm also interested in your opinions there. However, what I actually would see and say that the expertise and the cost that you needed to actually build and run a model was very, very high, and really decreases nowadays, and decreased a lot. However, that you really build a model that you can trust and that makes sense, that their AI maybe can help. And of course, open source models can help you that you run a model, but that it's a good model and that you can make right decisions based on it. That's still something that we need a lot of experience and expertise. All right, then quick overview how we tackle projects here at Hannemann. So try to cluster it into 4 different phases. The first 2 ones really on data selection and data preparation, then is the actual modeling part, and the last one is then you have the results and have to present them in a way that it's understandable and that people can actually make decisions based on that. Regarding the data selection, I already mentioned it a little bit. So you have your dependent variable, which could be sales, but also conversions, installs, and things like that. And then you have a couple of independent variables. So the classical ones would be your digital media, for example, Google, Meta, TikTok, Pinterest, and so on. Then traditional media could also be the case, like television, radio, print, out of home, all these spendings. Then often you can also think about other owned and organic media that you can input into the model, thinking about SEO activities, how's the Google search going, your organic social media activities, emails, newsletters, all these things that you control still, but you don't really spend marketing budget per se on that. And then it's just a bit on clustering that you have an idea what kind of variables you should use or think of. And then last one is external factors that you can not control, but will have some impact on your sales. Like the classical example is always the weather, ice cream shop will sell more ice cream when it's hot. But of course there are events like Black Friday or the activities of your competitors that you maybe should include into your model. Next step, when you have selected and collected all the relevant data, is data quality. So actually check, do you have enough data? Is it complete? Are there no duplications? Are there not outliers? How about the correlation between different channels? That are all the steps that you have to take to actually make the data ready for the later modeling. And when the data quality is okay, then some kind of data transformations to prep the data that you can feed it into the model. So align and aggregate the data. Maybe you have to do some scaling, normalization, and of course bring all the different data sources together into one format. I have one slide afterwards just to show you quickly how it looks at the end. Then the actual modeling part, one important part is to pick the model. There are a lot of SaaS vendors out there also that offer marketing mix modeling. But as I mentioned, there are quite a few open source tools nowadays. Our favorites, I would say, at the moment are Meridian, which was developed by Google, and PyMC Marketing. So these tools. There's also Robin by Meta, which was one of the first open source models, which is also popular. That one is based on R. These tools are Python packages, and they use a Bayesian approach, which we like quite a lot because you have the possibility to also encode some existing prior knowledge into the model. And it also, at the end, gives you results with some kind of uncertainty, which is also quite nice to be like, how sure can you actually be if this number is correct or not? Once you model the data, you have to of course, do some kind of validation if the model fits. There we separate into two different ones, the statistical validation. So actually, does the model fit the data? But then, of course, there's even more important, or maybe sometimes also the more difficult part, is the business validation. So does the model actually make sense on a business sense? And if the validation fails in one of these phases, then of course you have to do some refinements. So here are the two errors. So that's really an iterative approach. You change some of the settings, you maybe combine channels, you maybe remove some context variables, maybe you have to add some new variables. Refine your assumptions, rerun the model, and check again until you are at a step where you think where you can trust the model and where you're at the point where you want to present them maybe to the stakeholders or to the management. Classical results that you get is like the channel contribution, so that the model tells you 10% of your sales is because of your marketing activities on Facebook, and 5% maybe because of TikTok. You get, if the model can pick it up, some kind of ad stock and saturation curve. So saturation, if it makes sense to spend even more in this channel, or if the channel is already saturated. Ad stock means some kind of ad memory. I will also mention it in the next slide, so I don't want to get too much details. And one of the most important things for us at the end is, of course, the budget optimization and reallocation. So what decisions do you make based on your results of marketing mix modeling to make smarter decisions at the end and to spend your money more wisely? So a bit more detail, not too much, but on the data selection and collection part. So our approach most of the time is that we really start big with the data. So really think about all metrics, all KPIs, everything that can somehow influence your sales. But then consequently narrow it down. Really think about, are we really sure that this event has some impact on our sales? Because for the model, it's not, more KPIs are not better, or more variables, more parameters are not better for the model at the end. So really think about if this, think about the impact of your variables on the sales, and if you are pretty sure that there is some impact. A rule of thumb regarding the data volume that I want to give you, because that's often the first question if clients approach us regarding marketing mix modeling. So you should have at least 2 years of data on a weekly granularity for all the channels that are important for you and that you actually want to get some results at the end. With less data, it's getting quite difficult, and also some kind of rule of thumb. So you should have 10 observations for every parameter. Observations means more or less just a row in your final data set, and parameter means context variable, media, channel, things like that. So if you have 45 weeks and 2 years of data, you have roughly 108 observations, which means your model can probably estimate and analyze 10 parameters. So like 6 media channels and then maybe 4 context variables. Of course, it's only a rule of thumb. You can add more variables at the beginning and see if the model makes sense. But in our experience, it often just the results of the model are just not really trustworthy if you really put then 50, 20 variables into your model. Regarding media granularity, like at the end, for most of our projects, we work on a weekly granularity. However, we often try to collect the data as granularly as possible, so maybe on a daily level. And for like social media, maybe can also have the creatives even or the campaign names at least at the beginning. So maybe then you can separate the campaigns into more brand campaigns and into more performance campaigns. So you just have a little more flexibility on what you actually add to the model. So it will increase your data preparation effort if you have like really big data sources which are on a daily level and on a creative and campaign level and things like that. But it gives you a bit more flexibility in what you actually feed to the model at the end, and try like at least different versions and granularities. And of course, if you have more granular data and the model can actually pick up different signals in the data, then also have like a bit more business value from it than if you just like the other way around would be you just have online and offline spendings, then you just know that online is working better maybe than offline, but not really if which online channel is working better or working worse. And general recommendation, or what we often learn during a process regarding the data collection. So of course, try to automate and document all of this. Like this document is just if you really want to do marketing mix modeling on a monthly or quarterly basis, then the data collection process should be as fast as possible. And for a lot of our clients, this is really like the heavy lifting at the beginning to collect all these data sources. If you don't have, that's like here, this even better, if you don't already have some kind of central data warehouse, data lake, some space where all your, some kind of marketing and sales data stack where all these processes are automated. If this is not the case, then at least think about which things you can automate and document it as good as possible. So at least in the next iteration, it's getting faster to collect all the different data sources. And then a few insights on data preparation. So before you start modeling, have a closer look at all the data that you collected. So check for outliers, check for trends, check if there is something maybe missing, and also important, like discuss this with the stakeholders. Try to understand the data, if this is really is correct. Do you have all the example, one client where we had data from MediaMarkt and Saturn. At the beginning, we had only the online spendings that they had, but not the actual offline spendings that they also did in the offline stores, because they just did not thought of that. And we, of course, we get spendings for MediaMarkt, and at the first glance, we think that is okay, and it's hard for us to really check. Therefore, try to discuss it with your stakeholders, get into the details if the data is really complete and correct, because as always, if the data is not good, then your model, of course, will also be not good, and you will make some wrong decisions based on that. I already mentioned missing values. That's like the biggest problem if you actually spend something, but you don't get the actual values at the end, because maybe you some agency did your marketing spendings in a specific channel for a specific platform some years ago, and you're just not able to get the data, then this will be a problem for your model, of course, because it just tries to attribute these spendings to or the sales to a different channel. There are some workarounds, of course, but it will be a limitation of your model. And also, if the lack of spending variance and or low spending amounts will also impact your model, and will be probably hard to measure at the end what effect your channel has on the sales. And quite similar to the data selection and collection process, for the data preparation, also think about how to automate and document this process as much as possible, because you will have to do it again in a couple of weeks, months, or the next quarter. And of course, if you have some kind of centralized data platform, then maybe you already have a lot of data quality checks automated, so you already know that you can trust your data and that it is complete. And then maybe you can already create some kind of automated data transformation, so that the data is more or less always ready to run the next iteration of your marketing mix modeling. as promised, a quick example how this is just like a simple Excel file, but just to give you an idea how this looks like. So don't look too much on the numbers. In the end, it's really simple, I would say. You just have, on a weekly basis, you have one row per week. Then you have like the numbers for all your ad spendings, for example, all the costs for direct mail or for social media and for online displays, which is just like your the amount in euro or dollars. Then you have this one dependent variables, which is often the sales. And then you have a couple of external factors, which often is just like true, false, 0, 1. For example, here's the Black Friday. So this is just like an external factor that in this 1 week, there was some important event, in this case, Black Friday, which tells the model probably this event will have some impact negatively or positively on your sales. Yeah, just to give you an idea, the final data doesn't look that big. Was like, yeah, it's not really big data at the end, and often you can put it into an Excel file if you don't have a data platform or something like that. Then talk a little bit about data or the marketing mix modeling. I don't want to scale too much with this formula, but just give you an idea. At the end, most of the time you want to predict or calculate your revenue or sales. And these are just the different components that I will get into. I already mentioned Bayesian modeling, which we are now focusing most of the times in our projects. And as I mentioned, the nice thing is that it gives you some kind of uncertainty at the end in the results. So how certain it is that the number is correct, or how the probability on a confidence interval where the number actually lies. And of course, business decisions, marketing spendings, there is also some uncertainty. So it makes sense that also in your results, you don't just get one perfect number, but you get a number and then some kind of confidence how sure the model is that it is the right number. And the other thing already mentioned in this Bayesian modeling is nice that you can include existing knowledge. For example, results from lift studies, or also just general domain knowledge. Like if you had some kind of lift study before and you know that the return on investment for Facebook, for example, should be between 2 and 4, then you can feed this to the model and with that improve the model a little bit. What the model tries to do at the end, fill the perfect values to get the revenue for T, means just for every week in this case, and the different components in this formula is the baseline, which just means these are all the sales that are independent from your marketing, more or less. So if you would cut all your marketing spendings, then at least at this point, you would still get this amount of sales. Then the model also tries to pick up some more long-term growth or decline in a general trend, which might be like if the economy is doing worse or doing better. This could be some kind of general trend that people are buying more or buying less. It also tries to find some kind of seasonality, so predictable recurring patterns. Often in the summer holidays, sales decline for a lot of for our clients. Otherwise, on the Black Friday and Christmas, for example, are often peaks, and these are some kind of predictable cycles that are driven by calendar events. Then already mentioned it a little bit, is the saturation curve. Is something that modeling tries to find within the data. You can also see a simple visualization here. So it just tries to figure out if a channel is already saturated or not. So if it would make sense to spend more money in this channel, or if you already more or less got all your possible clients in this channel and it is saturated. The other thing I also mentioned briefly is the ad stock, which is one important thing that you can detect per channel, which just means that some of your marketing activities probably have some kind of longer memory effect. So if you see something on on Facebook an ad and probably 10 minutes later you have already forgotten about it. If you see a television spot, then maybe 1 or 2 weeks later you still remember that and make a decision or make a sales decision. So there are channels that where the effect of your marketing just takes a bit longer and can drive sales even days, weeks, months later. Then one of the last components is the context variable that I already mentioned, like Black Friday, the weather, and things like that. And the last one here is just like the error component, the random noise. So there will always be something that is just unexplainable, some kind of random quirks that your model won't pick up at the end, or can't explain with the data that you given the model. All right. Then once you model the data, as I already mentioned, there are like the two important things: the statistical validation and the business validation. Statistical is more or less evaluate how accurate the model fits the actual sales, and there are some standard statistical metrics that you can use, for example, R-square or MAPE. You can also expect it visually. Just put an easy example here. So you have the actual true KPI, or like the true sales here, and then the how the model predicts your sales, and then this like lighter green would be like this confidence interval, how sure the model is that it the actual sales will be in this range. And with these visualizations and with these statistical metrics, you can see how good your model actually fits the data. It is not easy, but at least you have like some statistical metrics. But one big warning, of course, your model can be like on a statistical validation perfectly fine and fits, but it can still be completely wrong because you maybe did not add all the data. You maybe forgot some external variables, so it can still lead to wrong business decisions. So it doesn't mean that your model is correct. Therefore, business validation is even more important, which ensures that your model has some realistic results that align with domain expertise. So again, you should check with your stakeholders or with the people that are working in the marketing field with the different platforms if these numbers make sense or not. Maybe you did some kind of list test and experimentation that you can check if the numbers are similar. Maybe you have the incrementality values or attribution from different platforms, and you can also double check if the model is at least in a similar range. And although with your first model will probably be incomplete and will probably also be some kind of wrong. So there is an iterative approach, and with every iteration you're getting better. And you probably will have some like contradicted results at the beginning that probably will tell you different things than your experience or your gut feeling was. And this can be wrong and this can be right. There's also something that you have to check afterwards with additional experiments, with discussions. Maybe the data was not good enough, but of course it could also be that you just had until now a bit of a wrong gut feeling. So there will be, of course, some discussions with the stakeholders at the end when you have the results. Results, I already mentioned a few of them. So this contribution chart is one of the most basic one that just tells search responsible for 25% of your sales, television for 20%, social for 12%. And it can also give you a kind of return of investment or return on ad spend, how performant your channels is. Already mentioned the saturation curves. You can see for the different channels which makes sense to spend more. But for us, often like the scenario planning at the end is the most interesting and most important one. So you have these results, but now what are you actually trying to do with these? So in this case, for example, you have the current budget, and then you can run different scenarios and different optimization from the model, which can tell you should move money from this channel into this channel. Or if you have more marketing budget, you should spend it on this channel. Or if you have to cut something, model can predict it would make sense to spend less money on a specific channel. And yeah, one thing is that when you have these results, you should not like try to win arguments about the past, but it's really about you have now you can make now some better decisions based on data, based on the model. So you understand your marketing activities better. You learn hopefully from the results of the marketing mix modeling. Then you decide what to do. Again, measure and try to improve your marketing spendings at the end. One of the last things I want to mention that we often try to give like as a last thought for our clients, that you plan your marketing activities a bit more for measurability. I know that there are, of course, a lot of different factors why you spend money on one channel or not on one channel, but it can also have to think a little bit about measurability when you decide on your marketing activities. So one thing I already mentioned is the variance in your spending. So you should have a couple of weeks where you spend a bit more on one channel and less on other channels, so that the model can at the end pick up easier some signals. And you should also not always spend based on the calendar. You should maybe sometimes also just spend a bit of irregular and not only getting this like seasonality spending. Overlapping is also one thing that the model can really have difficulties. So if you always spend, or if you always increase your money on Black Friday or in these weeks in all the channels with the same amount, and all the channels are like moving more or less the same, increasing and decreasing, then the model has also difficulties in actually separating these different channels and thinking about the impact of the different channels. Other thing is repeated activities. Also difficult if you just like had one try with some influencer campaign in these 2 years, then it's often difficult for the model to actually pick up some signals. So if you try something new, always think about that you maybe at least do it at least two or three times, so that the model can pick something up. Control testing, it's quite similar. Think about why you maybe decrease something in a channel, or maybe cut the spendings completely, and don't do it like randomly. Always think about it why you're doing that. One recommendation that we have sometimes for clients is to maybe pick fewer channels, at least for a couple of months, and spend more on these channels. Because if you have a lot of channels and you don't spend really much on each of the channels, then for the model it's also hard to really see if there are any bigger impacts from the different channels. So that can also at least help for measurability. Of course, I see the case that you also want to try new marketing channels, but just from a marketing mix modeling perspective, it can help to spend more on fewer channels. And last important thing, marketing mix modeling should never be like your only method to measure your marketing performance. There are incrementality testings, lift tests, there is attribution. So you should use all these methods, use learnings from one method into the other. I already mentioned if you did an incrementality test and you know, for example, the return of investment for a specific channel, and you can feed this into your model and improve the model at the end. All right, that's on the process. And as I mentioned, I want to close a little bit with AI as always. So just a few screenshots that I found when looking for marketing mix modeling and AI. There's one funny YouTube video, I would say, where used Claude and did marketing mix modeling in 12 minutes with Robin. Not sure about the results, to be honest, but still it's an interesting indirection. Recast is one of the SaaS vendors, and a lot of these vendors are now pushing MCP servers so that you can actually connect Claude, Gemini, one of your LLMs to your MMM and like not chat with your data, but chat with your marketing, mixed modeling results, which is an interesting direction. And he is getting really technical, but there is some by Andrew Karpathy, which is like one of the founders of OpenAI, and now he joined Anthropic, had this idea of auto research, which is more on the machine learning idea. So he gave an agent like just a couple of data and said, find machine learning, find the best machine learning algorithm to improve on one specific metric. And then the agent just loops over that. And he is one guy that tried that for marketing mix modeling. He used at the end wave as the metric. And then the agent just loops, picks different settings for the marketing mix modeling config and tries to find the best model. Of course, it's only statistical validation here. So on a business perspective, it can make absolutely no sense. And I also don't really looked into this so deep, but at least it claims it is better than the Google Meridian model, at least an interesting direction, I would say. And I just thought a little bit about, and that's like the last slide, and maybe then we can go into a discussion how AI can change how we work regarding mixed marketing modeling. Marketing is modeling, that's the case. Here at the bottom, I always put like this human in the loop. So I think for all the steps, it's still important that there is a human and test something. For example, for the first one, at the end, a human has to decide which KPIs are really important for the business and which external factors really matter. But of course, you can use AI to give you some inspiration, some recommendations, what metrics you should think of and maybe include. Of course, AI can help you to maybe generate scripts code to export data from the different platforms if this was something that you did manually at the moment. It might also be helpful to scrape data from your competitors to see when your competitors did actually some marketing activities. In these areas, AI can be very helpful. Data preparation is the same. At the end, a human has to check if the data is correct and if you really want to use this data for the modeling part. But AI can help you with all the data quality checks, can create your scripts for the data transformations, and can also give you maybe recommendations on how you should maybe group some different channels together because of correlations. On the modeling part, similar to the agent that I mentioned before, so of course you can with AI just run a lot of different model configs in parallel and maybe even use different tools. So one agent uses Meridian, the other one PyMC, and it can auto-generate like the documentation, give you an overview where are like the discrepancies between the different model configs. You can also maybe easier integrate your beliefs and your test results because you can just more or less add it with plain language into your chatbot. So I think that everything can speed up the process, but of course at the end you still have to decide if you trust the model or not. Similar to validation adaptation, like this is quite an overlap in these 2 points, that an AI can easily, if you run like 20 models in parallel, it can give you an easy summary what happened actually in this 10 models. If you would do this manually, it would just be very, very difficult. It can also auto-generate different what-if scenarios. If you spend that much money on this channel, what will happen? And can just do this in a way faster and more often than you would be able to do if you would do it manually. But again, this business validation has to be done by somebody who actually understands the business and the numbers, and it shouldn't be like outsourced to AI. And regarding the results, of course, one thing that is nice that you can more or less auto-generate different presentations, maybe tailored to CFO and maybe to the CMO. You can have interactive charts maybe. So there's a lot of possibilities with cloud nowadays, with also interactive graphics and visualizations, which is really powerful. And other thing that I already mentioned is like this MCP server that you maybe can just like chat with the results of your marketing mix modeling, so that you don't have to go to your data scientist as before and he gets an answer like a week later, but you can actually directly chat with these. I think this is all a bit in the future, and I'm not sure how good it will be. And of course, also again here, the final decision, if you really reallocate budget from one channel to a different one, should be done, of course, by a human and not by the AI, at least at the moment, I would say. So there are limitations, but I think it's a really interesting direction, and there are a lot of possibilities for using AI also in the marketing mix modeling realm. And with that, thanks for listening. And if you have any questions, comments, then please start.
Simon, nice to meet you. Thank you for the talk. I've had a few questions, and I'll start with something that you talked about in the deck. You talked about how low spend amount can make channel impact hard to measure. I was wondering if do you generally recommend your clients like a certain spend threshold, maybe as a percentage of the total budget, for a channel to show up significantly in the model?
No, we don't have like a really threshold. If the spending is like less than 1% of your total spending, then it's way too less. Would say like some kind of 5% threshold of your total spendings is often like things that it's, in our experience, these channels are often not getting picked up really in the model on a valid way. But it's not like an absolute value is a bit different to say, and it of course also sometimes depends on your business. And maybe for like niche businesses, it's also okay to have less marketing spending in total, but it still works out for this more specific target audience. Therefore, no absolute values, but that's maybe some kind of threshold that we had. In our experience.
I was wondering only about the percentage of the total budget. Sorry, I was saying, I understand it's not absolute value. I was saying as a percentage of the total budget, but I think you answered it. You said somewhere maybe 5% or somewhere around that, right? Yeah. Okay. Well, curious. Yeah. Okay. Another question for you was, you also talked about how you use other studies to calibrate MMMs, maybe offline sales lifts, or I don't know if you use also brand lift, but also interested in understanding how you do that and what happens if they diverge from, let's say, your historical MMM ROI numbers.
So, we did few times, also not too often, but most of the time it's like we had an incrementality test where we had some result on return of investment, and often it really changes the model at the end. In our experience. So if you really give the model at the end less possibilities on how the return on investment for a specific channel can actually move, then this changes often the final result in our experience, because the attribution for one channel is then often much smaller than the models often predicts, and of course then it moves the attribution to different channels. So that's one thing I can tell in our experience, that it really makes it different and often changes the results of the model at the end if you include some prior knowledge or some results from incrementality testing.
Another question was, do you model also on reach, or is it generally on impressions?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's kind of I would say open discussion. So to be honest, at the moment we often start with spending, because it's often the easiest starting point and the easiest way to get all the relevant data. On reach, not that much. I know that like Meridian is pushing there a little bit with more reach and frequency. We use sometimes in impressions, but as a starting point, often or most of the time, we're using at the moment spending as the for the first model, just to keep it a bit more simpler at the beginning. That's often the reason. But yeah, there is like open debate. I would say there are some SaaS vendors which are really pushing into the spending directions, and like PyMC and Meridian are going more into impressions, reach, frequency. But yeah, for us at the moment, it's often spending.
Got it. And last question from me was basically I was curious to hear your thoughts on like ad stock carryover. So do the baseline sales evolve in your like with with brand building over a longer time frame? Like thinking 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, or just generally how long does your ad stock like have you seen ad stock carryover last for brand channels?
Yeah, to be honest, most of the time not that long, to be honest. Most of the time it's a couple of weeks. So sometimes I was also a bit surprised or thought that I would have assumed that the ad stock, for example, for television would be longer. But in our experience so far, the model often did not really pick up a longer ad stock value. One thing that we are sometimes thinking about is then maybe adding some kind of brand value variables also to let the television not really has some kind of influence on the sales, but maybe more on brand value. And after the brand value improves, then maybe this leads to more sales. But like to answer your questions, no, nothing regarding months or quarters. It's really often more on the week level for ad stocks in our experience so far.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the question. You're welcome.
Sorry, there are a few more chats. I wonder if these questions. Let's just quickly dive into it. So there's one message from Magnus. Magnus, do you want to unmute yourself and ask the question yourself, or do you want me to read it out? Maybe you can just happy for you to read. All right, so I'm going to read a question out from Magnus. All right, thank you very much for the great presentation. I'm also going to type my questions. So would you say MMM works mostly for B2C companies that have continuous spendings? I am thinking of some B2B companies that e.g. do large events over a short period, and the main event even only some days with big speeches, etc. That would probably reduce variability too much, right? That was the first question.
Yeah, I agree with the problem regarding reliability. So say that is probably a bit difficult. Yeah.
Okay. And then the second question on the recommendations. If e.g. Facebook would perform low, does that mean one should not focus on it anymore? Or does it just mean one doesn't do a good enough work on that channel? Or is there a way to figure out which one of the both?
Yeah,
mute now, so I don't know if they understand what you say.
it shouldn't be on mute.
I'm muted.
Yeah, a good question, and that's like also one of the big limitations of marketing mix modeling. It's like on this more meta level. It just tells you Facebook is working yes or no or not so good, but it doesn't look on the actual creative levels. And it could just be that your actual creatives and your campaigns are not just working. And even if you put more money, or if you have better creatives and maybe spend less money, even it would work better. So that's one thing I would suggest that you like do some kind of A/B testing so that you at least know the campaigns and the creators that you are using are working and reaching some engagement. So I wouldn't say per se that one channel is not working if the model is telling you that, but you probably should do some testing afterwards. So maybe still for a couple of weeks, cut the money, the spendings for this channel to see if there is an effect, and maybe at least increase a different channel and see if something is happening there, if the direction that the model is telling you is actually correct and that you can see something there. But yeah, I wouldn't say per se that only because the model is telling you this channel is not good that you should cut it right away. Always question it, do some further testings if this is really the case or not. Should just be direction and sometimes food for watching.
Model for the signal and
At least at the beginning, like maybe on the second and third iteration, if it always tells you the same, that this channel is just not working in your case. Although you maybe tried like different creative ideas, then maybe it's the point where you can really say, okay, this is just not the right channel for us. But always test it afterwards.
Super. Thank you. There's one more online question. Sales is continuous, but e.g. brand questions are usually tracked less continuously. Like, for example, awareness, brand image, etc. These metrics are then more difficult to measure, right?
Yeah. So you also often have the problem that like brand awareness, you only have on a monthly granularity. So it's often difficult that the model really picks up, and brand awareness is also something that is not changing that much often. So it is more difficult. I totally agree. And it helps if you have like 3 or 4 years of data, then it's a bit more, or the chances are higher that you really get some trustworthy results. But in general, I agree that it's one of the more difficult variables to actually measure and get results at the end.
Thank you. Okay, there's a thank you for you from Magnus. It's great that our online audience is so active today. That's really good. Is there any questions from our audience that is actually here in Munich? Do you have want to know any further or any more questions?
Questions. Actually, I did have a question about long and short campaigns, but basically that's what you just touched in the end. Yeah, from my experience, like my company, we were running a lot of long, not short-term campaigns, not activation, but a lot of long-term, and yeah, we always struggled to.
With long-term, you mean like brand campaigns? Okay.
Brand awareness and campaigns that don't have the action from user don't expect immediate action.
So in general, it's easier for marketing mix modeling if you like direct to consumer, if the people are actually directly buying something. If you have a lot of brand or B2C, it's a bit.
But still, you touched a lot of things that, in my view, are very important to consider. For example, what we noticed when we started building the model is a couple of things, basically. First, at some point, we realized that people focus on the model more than on the business. Let's do this. And then like, stop. We need to keep that back. We're doing business. Model needs to help us, right? And then we noticed that it did help us sometimes remove the bias on specific channels. So people get energized. Well, I know the Twitter works. I feel it. I've seen comments. I've been replying, etc. But then you look at the data. You run more tests, etc. And then you see, okay, this channel doesn't bring so much value, even though someone loved it. So that was really helpful inside the team discussions and planning and making strategic decisions for the future, which you mentioned, and thank you.
I totally agree. It's when you're on a technical side, you always often get like
and also it's like generally when we decided to we have a lot of data, let's start building the model. It helped us kind of bring more data even together in a coherent structure, and it also helped in the long run. Interesting about AI and the use of AI there, because asking data scientists to do, for example, some of the analysis to run it does take quite a bit of time. So
there's one thing regarding the AI that I wanted to mention. Of course, you have to check with your legal perspectives, because you would then end up sending your data to Claude or the LMM, or and it can just help to like create a scripts and things like that. But of course, you have to keep in mind that if you really use it, then you will send some data to the provider. So just be cautious.
Very, very important point that MMM is one tool in your toolbox.
Exactly.
And you always have to use other tools, experiments, and so on, as Simon told. And if you do this, then it works.
Yeah. It does help. Yes.
Yeah. Cool.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah. Thanks for the great questions. I think we're perfect in timing, at least with the. All right. Yeah. Have a nice day, everybody.
Or another coffee.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.